Today we're talking about the original 26. Let's drum. Rudiments. Okay, in our last video we talked about how rudiments were like the lifeblood of all that is drums, and that rudiments are the fundamental to every fill, solo, or general anything and everything that is drum or percussion music. But here's the thing. The original 26, rudiments were not the 40 that we know today that we get from the Percussive Arts Society. There was only 26 of them. So the question is, why and where did they come from? And the story for it kind of goes a little bit further back than what you would think, and that's what we're talking about today. Cool. To understand the original 26 is to understand the origin of rudiments themselves. So, where did they come from? Rudiments trace back to military drumming traditions in Europe, especially in Switzerland, France, and England. Military drummers used these sticking patterns to give signals to the battlefield, commands for marching, maneuvering, and even charging. These patterns eventually crossed the Atlantic and became a part of early American fife and drum corps traditions. By the early 20th century, drummers wanted a standard set. In 1933, the National Association of Rudimental Drummers, otherwise known as NARD, was formed in the United States, with their main goal to preserve the drumming tradition and to give drummers a standard vocabulary so that way everyone could speak the same language. Okay, that's cool, but like, why only 26? Well, at the time, NARD went through hundreds of sticking patterns from military manuals and traditions, and they picked what they believed were the most essential and useful patterns, enough to cover all technical ground without overwhelming drummers. These essential patterns would become what we know as the original 26 rudiments. They even took the 26 and divided them into 4 different families so that way it was easier to understand and learn them. Rolls, paradiddles, flams, and drags. Together, these 4 families formed a toolbox that helped drummers overcome any type of challenging sticking pattern that they might encounter. And now we're starting to answer the question, what were the original 26 and why were they created? Well, that answer is pretty simple. It's for standardization and for mastery. Standardization meant that every drummer from a military background, from orchestra, and even drum corps had a shared foundation. And this is still something that I run into all the time. Self-taught drummers, or what I would call garage band drummers, sometimes and more often than not overlook learning their rudiments, whether it be the standard 40 or even the original 26. And I admit, you don't really need all standard 40 rudiments or the original 26 in order to play the drum set in a rock band. But I'll tell you that I can always see a distinct difference between drummers or percussionists who have mastery over the standard 40 and those who don't. It's just vocabulary and being able to express yourself and in playing patterns that you wouldn't necessarily understand or do on your own. In other terms, there's no form of rudiment or practicing drums that's going to make you worse. Rudiments in general just contain core fundamentals that just make you better, whether you're going to use them on the set, on a xylophone, or on the marching field. Part of this standardization came through joining NARD. By joining and having a membership gave you credibility. Drummers were trying to find a way to separate themselves from the riffraff. They wanted credibility so that way other people knew that they were a professional and they knew what was going on. By having this credibility meant that you had passed the NARD test in order to gain membership into the organization. The way NARD ran their tests is through certain criteria that tested you over something they called the Essential 13. The Essential 13 rudiments that were inside of the original 26. Basically saying that you don't need to know all of the 26 rudiments, but as long as you know at least these 13, you are a credible drummer. So what was this test that you had to do in order to earn membership into NARD? Well, the test contained 3 different aspects of it: performance style, solo performance, and sight reading. The performance style required each of the essential 13 rudiments to be played as open, closed, open. That meant starting the rudiment slowly, increasing the tempo smoothly, and then slowing it back down again, demonstrating control at every speed. This is very similar to how we do things today, where we demonstrate things at various tempos, but in my opinion, this is significantly easier because you're not being forced to be kept honest with the metronome. You're gradually speeding up on your own, and let's be honest, you can cheat pretty easily by doing that. The solo performance required applicants to play a rudimental snare drum solo, often being drawn from NARD's own solo book, the American's NARD Drum Solos. This showed that applicants weren't just good at rudiments, but they knew how to apply them within context and play them musically. Finally, sight reading. Applicants had to read and play a sample of 8 to 16 bars of a march to demonstrate that they could read and interpret the notation in real time. This one blows my mind because the standard for sight reading is so much higher than that now. It's crazy. You have professional musicians that are sometimes required to walk in and sight read something down once so that way it can be recorded. Like, it's just, and the level of music that they were having to play to sight read, like, I had junior high kids that could do that. It's just crazy to see the gap in the level and how much things have grown. But anyway, I digress. For decades, the original 26 rudiments were the universal entry ticket for serious drummers. It's what separated you from everybody else. Having a membership to NARD gave you credibility. It was like this status that told everyone that you weren't just a hobbyist, but you were a serious professional drummer because you knew these 26 rudiments and you knew what was going on. So if this was the case, then what happened? What happened to NARD? Why did it go away? And what's going on with it today? Well, NARD probably deserves its own individual video, but by 1977, NARD had disbanded. The world was changing, drumming was evolving, rudiments were becoming hybridized and pushing well past the original 26. In 1984, the Percussive Arts Society, the PAS, stepped in and expanded the original 26 to the international standard 40 that we know today. I do think it's important to note that they expanded on the original 26. They didn't reinvent the wheel or go back to the drawing board. They just took a good thing and made it better. So NARD eventually faded into history until about 2008, when surviving members and a new generation of rudimental drummers revived the organization. Today, it continues to honor the American traditional rudimental style, but it's a very niched group compared to the global PAS. However, to me, this raises a very important question. Why didn't NARD just evolve? Like, why didn't NARD just change with the times? Like, why did they stay stuck? Like, why didn't they expand the original 26 to the 40? Like, I feel like there's a story there, but I don't quite know what the answer is. And maybe I'll expand on that and go down that rabbit hole in a completely different video. Anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is that the original 26 Rudiments carries with it the weight of tradition and history. It reminds us of where drumming came from military calls to battlefield signals to the need of discipline and precise sticking. They're the backbone of all things that are percussion, whether it be drum sets, orchestral, modern marching band, or traditional rudimental drumming. And I'm not gonna lie, some rudiments are definitely more relevant in certain areas than they are others, but mastering or at least knowing the original 26 or the standard 40 that we have today is never a bad idea. And honestly, any real serious percussionist or drummer that I know today kind of knocked these out when they were in middle school or high school. And at this point, mastering the standard 40 is more of a starting point or a stepping stone than it is a form of elitism. So, next time you're practicing your flams and your paradiddles, remember, you're not just running exercises. You're carrying on a tradition that's hundreds of years old, one that will forever be immortalized with the original 26. But what do you think? Are rudiments easy or are they hard? Did you even know what they were before this video? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And don't forget, if you liked the video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe so that way you don't miss out on further content. And as always, Makala Checo. Boom, boom.